Now the phone rang again, and it was from the magistrate's court, a prison van, and a couple of prison officers. Remand case. And within 2 minutes, governor was thinking, was that a hoax? Hoax means, deception. So could that be a hoax? And his imagination was running rights now. And then he thought actually that don't be so silly. Okay? Don't have to. Now, here for the first quarter of an hour, Stephens had looked dutifully through the peephole at at the interval of every minute, and after that, every 2 minutes. At 10:45, he looked again, and it took just hardly 4 or 5 seconds. It was all right. What was the point? What was the point actually? That Evans, McCleary inside, he outside. It was all fine. Moreover, that Evans, pen between his lips, staring blankly just in front of him at the door, as if needed some or seeking some sorely needed inspiration, as if he would get something, some idea or something, and then he would start writing. So he was sitting like that, and there in the next chair it was McCleary, the invigilator, seated slightly askew means bit in a slanting manner. He had some problem, piles, so seated slightly askew, and his hair closely cropped, amateurishly to the scalp. Now, amateurishly, that means as if cut by someone who is not professional or so. So that closely cropped to the scalp, amateurishly, non-professionally, something like that. And his eyes behind those pebble lenses, and he was, peering at the church times, means looking at the church times, and his right index finger hooked beneath the narrow clerical collar, and that he had a beard. He was stroking that beard with his hand, and his nails meticulously manicured. So meticulously, very carefully. So he was sitting there in that way. Now, it was some time had elapsed by this time, and the phone crackled once again. The receiver actually crackled once again. It was around 10:50 or so, and Evans was saying, now here I must point out something, that he was sitting with his index finger in this way, holding the narrow clerical collar. So why? Why was sitting like that? Couldn't he sit normally, simple like? And so was that some specific reason for this? Or it was just a normal course that, while reading the newspaper, he simply just, his hand went up here and he held the collar like this. Yes. So let's see what happens if there was something specific or not. So here, Evans, please sir. Please sir. Here is what actually he wanted something. And what was that? The blanket. So he was saying that there's a bit parky here, sir. Parky, that means cold, chilly. And can I put my blanket around my shoulders, sir? So there's one on my bunk here, sir. So bunk, bed. So his blanket was there on the bed, and he wanted permission to take that blanket or just put that blanket around him on his shoulders. Okay, the invigilator agreed to that. Now what happened, after some time, it was 10:51 or so, when Stephens peeped through the peephole, what he saw? The grey regulation blanket. Now what this regulation blanket means? So regulation blanket which can help control the temperature. That's why regulation blanket. So that gray regulation blanket was there around his shoulders, and like earlier, all blankly staring in front of him, pen still between his lips, he was sitting like that. And when he looked again closely, so what he did, he just pulled the blanket more closely to himself. Now, Stephens was thinking that, is there anything fishy? Something fishy? And something suspicious, something doubtful? Hadn't Jackson said? So he was thinking, should he report it or not? But then he thought, or then suddenly he felt, or a thought came to his mind. What? That was he planning a sudden Batman leap to suffocate McCleary in the blanket? So was it that he would, like some Batman, like he would do this and just suffocate McCleary in the blanket? Was he going to do anything like that? And then he felt, oh, don't be daft, don't be crazy, don't be foolish. There is no sun in some part of this prison, and so no heating even in the summer months. So it could get chilly in some of the cells. So then, okay, he decided to get back to his every minute observation, that okay, he would revert to that every minute observation. So these are the things that we were talking of. And now what happened after all this, that blanket around his shoulders and all this was happening, the receiver crackled again. And what happened actually, what was that? Invigilator was telling something to Evans. It was 11:22 almost, 5 minutes remained actually. 5 minutes remained, and examination was about 2 hours, almost over we can say. But something gnawed away quietly in governor's mind. That means something was troubling him. It was like, how could all this happen so smoothly, and something might be there. Something was troubling him. And so he reached for the phone. And Jackson received it, and then he asked Stephens to come out. And he said, the governor wants to speak to you. Hurry, man. So Stephens went up and he took that receiver and listened to the hurriedly spoken orders. And what was he ordered? The governor told him that Stephens himself was to accompany McCleary to the main prison gates. And understood? Fine, understood. Now Stephens himself was to make sure that the door was locked in advance after McCleary had left. Understood? Understood. All fine. So these were the instructions, and we must ask a question on this. Is quite important, and it is, what instructions did Stephens receive three minutes before the end of examination? So what instructions did Stephens receive 3 minutes before the end of the examination? And the answer is very much clear. As you can see, the 2 points we have mentioned very specifically and clearly here, that he was to accompany McCleary to main prison gates, and 2, he was to make sure that the door was locked in advance after McCleary had left. So these were the 2 instructions, very much clear. Now what examination was not almost, it was over. The governor heard the final exchanges. Invigilator told Evans, now stop writing and put your sheets in order. See, they are correctly numbered. Check the numbering and all. Okay, finally he asked, all right, was it? Means asking, how was the exam? Not too bad. Now see, all the time the pen was between his lips and he was saying, not too bad. How funny. And outside, Stephens was talking to the invigilator. So Stephens was asking, what that, how do you think, what do you think he might have feared he has done? So that invigilator said, Och, I cannot think he's distinguished himself, I'm afraid. What does that mean? I'm afraid in conversation we used to suggest or mean what? I'm sorry. So he was saying, I'm sorry, I don't think he will pass. And see, his broad Scots accent, something to be noticed. His broad Scots accent seemed broader than ever, and his long black overcoat, reaching almost to his knees, fostered an illusion as if he has suddenly grown slimmer. Now, what was that? In 2 hours examination, has he got slimmer? The invigilator, what? Do you think so? That he might have got slimmer in 2 hours examination? Or as given that it was just an illusion, that yes, it seemed that he has got slimmer, but actually it was not so. Now here, Stephens was perfectly happy. See this, that after this, okay, I have just shortened the things and I'll move it later. So Stephens was all perfectly happy. And why was he happy? Because the governor had asked Stephens and not Jackson. So Jackson was senior and Stephens was junior. But Jackson was not given the responsibility. It was Stephens who was told to see McCleary off the prison, the premises. So that's why he was quite happy that he was given that charge or that responsibility. So all in all, the morning had gone pretty well. It means all was fine. But something stopped him from going to the canteen for a belated cup of coffee. He wanted to go and have a coffee. But there was some problem. Something stopped him. And what was that? It was, actually, he wanted to go and have a last look. Where? At Evans, the cell. It was something that he had seen in a program on TV. There was a woman, an old woman, who could never convince herself that she had locked the front door. So it was just like that. And after going to the bed, she would wake up and then she would get down and check 12, 15 and sometimes even 20 times. Just as people when they went out, say they pull the lock and check that whether it is all fine or not. Now here, once is okay, fine. But here she would check not just once or twice or thrice, 20 times. And that was too much. So today with Stephens, it was something like that. He wanted to go and check. And okay, he crossed that yard, went to Ivan's cell, and the moment he peeped through that peephole, he was all shocked. He was all shocked and he's, oh no, Christ, no, because there in that Evans chair was a man sprawled back, just lying back like this, reclining. There was a man. For a semi-second, Stephens thought that it must be Evans. But he could not make it sure. He could not confirm that. Because, that Evans had long hair and the man had short, cropped hair. And Evans was shaving And here this man had beard. And moreover, why Evans would kill himself or say hurt himself? So why? So of course there was no point thinking that he could be Evans. And what was the situation? That blanket, that grey regulation blanket, slipping from his shoulder back, and his closely cropped, irregularly tufted hair, all awash with fierce red blood, which had already dripped through to the beard, and now coming over to that white clerical collar, and from there to that black clerical front. So it was all bloody, it was all red and red, all in blood, in that fierce blood. And seeing this, what happened? Stephen shouted out for Jackson. He called out Jackson, and the sound seemed to penetrate the curtain of blood which covered his ears. Whose? McCleary's ears. And he shouted those so sharply, so loudly, that the sound seemed to penetrate. It means just tearing that curtain of blood just entered into his ear, and he felt for the handkerchief in his pocket. The McCleary, yes, the invigilator. He felt for the handkerchief in his pockets, and he took that out and held it close to his bleeding head. And he tried to speak, but his voice trailed away. He couldn't speak. Just it all trailed away. He couldn't speak properly. He was mourning. And by the time Jackson came and asked Stephens or dispatched Stephens to ring the police and the ambulance, the handkerchief was a sticky, squelchy wad of cloth. That means it was all stained in blood. It was all soggy and sodden completely in blood. Wad means piece of cloth. Now, that man, that means McCleary, he was mourning. He was mourning, and his face tightly twisted with pain. Yes, the pain could be seen on his face. That pain, his face was tightly twisted and all. And he rose, he got up and he said, I'm all right, get the police, I know where, so get the governor. So he was crying and shouting like that. And then he closed his eyes, and another red drop of blood just splashed down on the floor. And what his hands felt for the German question paper on the table, and yes, he found it and just grasped it into his bloodstained hands, and he was saying, get the governor. And all at once, the sirens were sounding. The police officers, the prison officers, barked orders. The puzzled prisoners pushed their way along the corridors, and the phone bells were ringing everywhere. It was all a hodgepodge situation, all in a hustle-bustle situation. It was like that. And in a little while, after some time, McCleary came, supported on either side by Jackson and Stephens, and in the yard he was greeted by the governor. So governor was there, he met governor, and governor, that we must get you to the hospital immediately. And he said that, call the police. He said, yes, they are on their way. Now you might be confused by why this police when he was already there in the prison. So see, the prison authorities are different and the police is different. The job of prison authorities is to look after the prison and the prisoners, maintain all the things there. And the job of police is to go after the criminals and catch them up. So that's why he was talking of police again and again. So now the governor was there, and he now was talking to the governor. Governor, governor, what you see, governor, what they've done. He was talking like that, and with that, with that, he thrust that German question paper just in front of governor's face. He just thrust it, he just pushed it before governor's face. He wanted to show him something. And now the governor realized, when he looked down at the paper, he realized that what he was trying to tell him, what he was trying to say. Now he saw what a photocopied sheet. A photocopied sheet had been very carefully and cleverly superimposed on the last, originally blank page of the German question paper. So I must move it to the next, and you will find it here that, yes, showed the question paper to the governor. So, yes, a sheet, a blank, a photocopied sheet was pasted there on the last page. Governor understood what he was trying to tell him. And he was saying, you see, governor, you know what they've done. And governor, dredging the layers of his long neglected learning. Why long neglected? Because he had studied German in the 6th class. So, trying to recall. And then willed himself what? To translate the German text before him. Hence, he definitely wanted to translate all that German text. And yes, what was there in that paper, sei sollen verbatim, something like that, means all in German, but yes, the translation is given for us. And what was that? The vital point in time is 3 minutes before the end of the examination. And what? Just remember that. And something, actually see, everything was going as per the plan. You can see everything was going, because it all happened just at the end of the examination, 3 minutes before the end of the examination. That was written in that paper. That was vital point. Important time is 3 minutes before the end of the examination. You must follow the plan already, something. And then something. Remember, don't hit him. Said what? Don't hit him too hard. Remember, he's a minister. And this is what was written. And then what happened? It was Carter. A siren wailed to its crescendo. So governor saw this, he was trying to translate, and suddenly that a siren wailed to its crescendo. Now crescendo means it got louder and louder and louder. Why? Because that car came closer, and as it came closer, the sound got louder and louder and louder. And who was that actually? The superintendent, Detective Superintendent Carter. And he, when he came there, actually, the car just, squealed to a jerky halt. And he just came and stopped with a jerk, a screeching halt. And he swung out of the car, saluted the governor, and he said, "What the hell is happening, sir?" And when he saw Evans, he said, "Who has hit him?" So that McLeary cut through whatever explanation the governor might have given. Means before the governor could speak, he just cut through and he said, "I know where Evans, I know Elsfield Way, officer, Elsfield Way, I know where Evans." So and then he was breathing heavily, and he reclined against the side of the car, and what his hand, which was all stained in blood, so it left an imprint in tarnished crimson. That means that imprint of his hand was left there. And the governor, he looked all puzzled, and he looked at the governor. So the governor said that, "Take him with you if you think he'll be all right. He's the only one who knows what's happening here." Because no one else knew what was happening in the cell. Only Evans, and the invigilator was there. So the governor said, take him with you if you think he'll be all right. He's the only one who knows what's happening. So as per the instruction of the governor, he took him into his car and the car went away. And now what? The governor remembered what he said, the last words, Elsfield Way. And there before him, in the last line, in the question paper, it just came up before him. He saw in that question paper, what from Elsfield Way to Headington roundabout. And yes, he remembered, oh yes, there, yes, the examination department was there. And so what, right from the beginning, someone must have been engaged in that escape plan. Otherwise, this correction slip and the paper itself, how would he manage all that? So governor had now some clue, had some suspicion. Now the governor turned to Jackson and Stephens. He was really quite angry at them, and his voice sounded almost calm and the scathing contempt. Now scathing means burning, caustic. Like he was very, like people when they speak with their teeth all tittering and all. So he was speaking in that way, in a cold-blooded fashion, something like that. And he said that which of you two morons was it who took Evans to the main prison gates and waved him bye-bye, something like that. So morons means fools. And then Stephens, now his voice, he was almost stuttering and stammering, and he said, it was me, sir, it was me, just as you told me. Now, Governor, I told you, you say? Now, when was that? So, it was 20 past 11 when you rang me up, and now Governor was really very angry and he was just bursting out in anger, and he said, you blithering idiot. It was like all in anger he was speaking to him, that you blithering full composite, utter, complete, stupid idiot, that it was not I, didn't you realize? But what was the use? He had tried Fawn at the time, almost unsuccessfully, but now he turned to Jackson. And yes, now it was his turn. And he asked Jackson, now, Jackson, how long have you been pretending that you got a brain? Now, he said, I'll tell you. Yes, he was asking that, do you have any brain? Do you have any mind? Well, I'll tell you, Jackson, your skull is empty, absolutely empty, that there is nothing in your skull, there is nothing in... So he was that angry, and he had reason. He had reason to say so. And what was that actually? It was Jackson who had spent 2 hours in Evans' cell the previous evening, and it was Jackson who had reported that there was nothing hidden in the cell. And in spite of that, Jackson had managed, Evans had managed to conceal not only a false beard, but a dog collar and all that paraphernalia of the doctor, we can say, all that paraphernalia. Now, paraphernalia here means belonging to a particular profession. So, not just that, say, the dog false beard, but also a minister dog collar and that rest of the clerical paraphernalia. Clerical paraphernalia, that means something that belonged to the clerics or the parsons or pastors, but also a weapon. Not just all these, but also a weapon with which he gave him a terrible blow across his head. So then how did he manage all that if he had checked? How could he manage? So that's why he was getting angry at Jackson. So So we must ask this question, and the question is, why was the governor angry at Jackson? Why was the governor angry at Jackson? And now it is very much clear this was the reason. Then how could he conceal all that? A prison went back alongside, but the governor made no immediate move. He just looked at the German text before him, and here it was what? From Elsfield Way to Headington roundabout, and from there you go straight over and make your way to New Gribben. Now, New Gribben? Where on earth? Never heard of it. Like he had never heard of that place, New Gribben. So he was thinking that where on earth? Never heard. Now, Wargrave, could it be Wargrave? But no, that too didn't seem a possibility. Then he thought that could it be a code word for something? And then yes, it hit him. It hit him suddenly that yes, it is what? New Grave. God, New Grave was a pretty big sort of place. So he now finally understood that that was a code word for New Grave. Now he just wrapped up his orders to the driver at St. Aldate's police station. Now the driver had to take Jackson and Stephens to St. Aldate's police station. So he said, now take Jackson Stephens to St. Aldate's police station and just talk to Chief Inspector Bell. And then he himself just leapt up the stairs 3 at a time and went to his office, and there he got Inspector Bell on phone and put the facts before him. So he had a talk with Chief Inspector Bell and put all the facts before him, and Bell said, what? We'll get him, sir, we'll get him with a bit of luck. Okay. Now what? Governor lit a cigarette and relaxed himself on the chair, like just sat back, leaning back on the chair, sat there. And what? He was kind of admiring Evans in the heart of hearts. He was thinking that what a beautifully laid plan it had all been. What a clever fellow Evans was. So in the heart of hearts, he was admiring that how clever the man is, how beautiful that plan was. So he was thinking like that, careless, leaving the question paper behind. That was really quite careless of him that he left the paper, because it was because of that question paper now that he'll be able to catch him. And moreover, then he thought, after all, we all have made our mistakes somewhere down the line, and now okay, fine, that we made mistakes, he too has made mistake, and so now what? Very shortly Mr. Clever Evans would be right back doing his once more, means he would be back in the prison doing his another term. So, and then what happened? A fawn erupted in a strident burst. Strident, that is cacophonous. So there was that sound, and what was it actually? It was Detective Superintendent Carter. He had called and he said, what? McCleary had spotted Evans on that Elsfield Way, and we got the number all right and given him a chase, but missed him at the Headington roundabout. And he must have doubled back into the city. That's what they guessed and said, that he must have doubled back into the city. Governor said, no, he has gone to Newbury. Now, Governor had already read that German question paper and he knew that he was going to Newbury. So he said, no, he has gone to Newbury, and then he explained his reason for thinking so. And then he thought, now it was a police job now, so why he should worry about that or bother about that. He was another good for a giggle, gullible governor. So good for a giggle, that means a laughing stock. Gullible, one who can easily be befooled. So he was that type of person. And here he is talking to Carter that, by the way, Carter, you managed to take McCleary to the hospital, all right? So he said, yes, really groggy he was. Groggy means what? Weak and tired. So really groggy he was when we reached the examination offices, and from there they rang up to the hospital for the ambulance, and he's in the Red Cliff now. So Red Cliff, you can see the hospital, so he's in the Red Cliff now. And there what happened, now to confirm, governor rang up to the hospital and he said he's a parson. So they said, no, there is no such man. I don't think there is any such person. He said, yes, there is. You'll find that one of your ambulances picked him up from the Elsfield way. He said, oh, that, yes, we sent an ambulance, all right, but when we had gone there, the fellow had gone, vanished. Now the governor was all shocked. He was now thinking that the man was gone. Now see, here Evans went away, McCleary went away. Now what all this is happening? He was all puzzled and confused. Now he was not listening to the man. And finally, when later it was searched, they found out what that McCleary, the real McCleary was lying in his flat, all securely tied, his mouth gagged, right from the morning. Since morning at 8:15, he was there in his flat. So now, this is all, the situation has all got puzzled now. So if McCleary was there in his flat since the morning, then who was the person who came to the prison as McCleary? And who was the person who went out of the prison and who remained inside? So all the situation got totally muddled and puzzled. Now, after searching a lot, governor understood the fact, the thing, what? It was not Evans impersonating McCleary who had gone out. It was Evans impersonating McCleary who had stayed in. That means Evans didn't run away. Yes, Evans didn't run away. It was the prison authorities, the governor and Carter, they who took McCleary who took Evans along with them and dropped him at the examination offices. He didn't run away. He was accompanied by the prison officers, the prison authorities, and dropped at the examination offices. So that's how they had done. And governor now understood and realized all that thing. And here, see, Evans, and now you must understand, you must know all the things, that how all this began, how all this happened. So it began with the hat. If you remember, Jackson asked him to remove the hat, but he refused to remove the hat, and the reason he offered was that lucky charm, but it was not that lucky charm. It was actually the part of his plan. And if you remember, when Stephens went back, returned after seeing the invigilator off at the prison gates, so for a semi-second thought that it must be Evans, but he couldn't confirm why. That the reason was Evans was clean shaved, and at that time he had beard, his hair was long, but at that time his hair was cropped. And moreover, why would McCleary hit Evans, or why would Evans himself hit himself? Why? So that in that situation, it was quite natural to think that Evans might have run away, and the person there might be McCleary. So it was quite natural, and that's why he couldn't make it sure. Then there were other things, like if you remember that he was sitting with his index finger hooked beneath the narrow clerical collar, and the reason behind that was it was not some that natural course of action. The reason was that he was wearing two dresses. And the other fact is, if you remember when McLeary, the invigilator, went out, so he seemed as if he had gone slimmer. And yes, he had got slimmer because, as I said, he was wearing two dresses. So before going away, what he did, one of the coat he gave, he gave to Evans, and that's why he appeared slimmer. And the reason of that index finger was that one of the collar was springing back, skidding back, and to hold it, he had just put his index finger there so that Stephens wouldn't get suspicious. He could avoid any suspicion. That was the reason behind that. So right from the beginning, all the things, one after the other. Moreover, the phone calls just before the end of the examination, 3 minutes before the end of the examination, all that was also a part of the plan. So all these were the reasons. And now what? Evans. So what the fish and chips were delicious, means he had good snacks. And after having a gentle stroll around the Chipping Norton, he came to the hotel and decided to have an early night because he was all tired with that chasing and things running away. So he decided to have an early night, that would go to bed early. And a smart new hat concealed the wreckage of his closely cropped hair. It means now he had a new hat to cover up all that wreckage, his long hair, which he loved very much, that had been cropped. But okay, and it would take some while, it would take a good while for his hair to regain the former glories. Means it would take some time for his hair to grow up again to the former length. But what the hell did that matter? After all, he was out, and that was more important for him. The hair, they would grow up again. And he had a bit of bad luck. Yes, Jackson had took away that the pair of scissors, and he had to do all that cropping with the razor all night, and that was really a tricky job, a complicated one. But he had his good luck as well. If Jackson had removed the hat or forced him to remove the hat, then what? All his plan would have been spoiled. But thank God and thankfully that didn't happen. And one of the worst things, funny really, had been that beard. Yes, and he had been allergic to sticking plasters, and now it was feeling red and sore. But okay, all was fine. All in all, everything was good. Now he went up to the reception, and the receptionist wasn't the same girl who had booked him in. And the change was for the better. Okay, fine, no problem at all. He gave her his best smile and said that he won't be bothering her with breakfast or meals. And just then what? He ordered for a copy of Daily Express and said that ring him up early morning, 6:45. Tomorrow was going to be another busy day. Means he asked her that she should just ring him up or call him up early in the morning at 6:45 because tomorrow he would be quite busy. And so he whistled to himself as he went up the stairs to his room, and he was quite pleased by the idea of dressing himself up as the minister, putting that clerical front and that minister dog collar. So he was happy thinking about all that, though it was really a bit tough fiddling with that collar and that clerical front under that blanket. So it was really a tough job than he had expected or bargained for. But it had worked out well. And moreover, that collar, that was skidding back, that was moving back, and he just got his hand well in time to avoid that skidding. Otherwise, perhaps Stephens could have noticed. So everything worked smoothly, though only that collar that was the problem, that fiddling inside that blanket, that was a bit problem. But yes, it went smoothly, worked smoothly. And yes, outside the prison, in the car, he got everything that he had been promised of or he would require. Means he got soap, he got water, he got clothes, and a map. Map, what? Ordnance Survey map of Oxfordshire. Yes. Now, what was the use of that map? We'll get to know later. Now he opened the log, got inside the bedroom, got inside the room, and closed the door quietly behind him. And there before him was the man whom he had least expected, whom he didn't want to see at all, and what he stood frozen to the spot, as if he had caught the glimpse of Gorgon. Now, Gorgon are the avenging deities in Greek mythology. They are three sisters, and it is said whoever cast a glance at these Gorgon, these avenging deities, he is turned to stone, all petrified. These avenging deities, actually, they don't have hair on their head. In place of these, the hair, they have what? Hissing snakes. So, and he stood there like that, all petrified. And then what? The governor. It was the governor, of course, with the help of that question paper, he had found that hotel and he was there. And Evans darted his glances desperately here and there, but the governor said, it's not worth anything. No use trying to escape or so. He said, our men, I've got men all around. Means it is like you have been surrounded. The place has been surrounded. Though there were only two, there were just two, but Evans didn't know, and he said that we have surrounded, we have cornered you, we have people all around. And moreover, he said, women too. Don't you think that the girl at the reception was rather too sweet? Now, Evans was visibly shaken. He just sat there on a chair and he just held his head in his hands. Yes, he realized and for some moment, for some time, there was utter silence. And then after some time, he raised his head and he spoke. It was, I suppose, it was that bloody correction slip, I suppose. And Mr. Governor, the governor, he couldn't mask the deep satisfaction. He was really feeling very happy that he has caught him. And he said, what? Well, there are a few people who know a bit of German. So it was like feeling proud on his ability, his quality of knowing German. So he said, there are a few people. Now Evans, he knew that he was beaten, and he then managed to smile ruefully. Ruefully means sorrowfully. And he said that, that it was not a mistake. It was not a mistake. We could have managed that somehow. What? The hotel, or that question paper, he's trying to say that was not a mistake. We could have managed that somehow. But the really important thing was to know when the exam started. And moreover, to get everyone out of the way for a couple of minutes. So that was more important. So for that, we definitely had to know when the exam. Actually, this is all about the last 3 minutes, because all those things happen in the last 3 minutes, and for that, changing that coat and all that dress, sticking that beard and all that, so all those happen in the last 3 minutes. So that's what he is saying, to clear everyone out of the way for the couple of minutes. And the governor said, and I offered all that information like a fool on a platter. Like a fool, I presented you with all that information on a platter. He said, well, someone did. Well, someone did. And that correction slip killed two birds with a single stone. So here, of course, we are at this, that he was caught at Golden Lion and all that. We are talking of all those things. Now here we need to know this, and we must ask, the question is, how did the correction slip killed? How did the correction slip kill two birds with a single stone? With a single stone. So how? And the answer is very much clear, that with the correction slip, Evans got the name of the hotel. If you remember, Golden Lion, that Evans reached that hotel, Golden Lion. And how did he get to know that correction slip? If you remember, there was a phrase, Zum, Golden and Löwen, and that was nothing else but the name of this hotel, Golden Lion. So that's how. So one, he got to know the name of the hotel, and the other, his friends got to know when that exam would finish, so that they could call. That's how they could call just 3 minutes before the end of the examination. And because of that, Evans could manage that beer and that clerical friend and all those things. So that was important, and that's how two birds with a single stone. So governor said, that's a pretty good name. What? Golden Lion. He said, that otherwise, he said, if it hadn't been that common word, he said, Evans was saying, if it hadn't been that common word, then how would I know that? And he said, sir, in fact, how did you know? Sir, how did you know that which Golden Lion it was? The same way as you did. He said that if you take that 6-figure number, what? Index number 313, center number 271, if you put that 6-figure reference on the Ordnance Survey map for Oxfordshire, it lands you bang into the middle of Chipping Norton. Oh, that's good. We thought you would go to Newbury. Governor said, yes, we did. Oh, that's something. Now, governor was still puzzled. He had something going on in his mind. He said, now tell me, Evans, do you know all that German? He was still puzzled about that. He said, Evans, do you know all that German? He said, nay. I roughly knew what was all this about. After all, he made the plan, so who else would know? He knew all that plan. And then he said, I thought it would throw a few spanners in the work. That means muddle you all sort of bit. Muddle, confuse you all. Moreover, now, the governor had one more question. The governor said, now tell me, Evans, that how did you manage to bring all that blood into the cell? How did you do that? So, now Evans was now really quite happy that still the things were, shadowed or not clear. So he was feeling quite happy. He said, yes, clever that, wasn't it? Clever. That's how clever I am. That's what he was trying to say. That when there was nothing to start off with, when the invigilator was checked, right in the beginning. So you could well ask about that, sir. You could well ask about that, definitely. But I don't know if I ought to tell you. I mean, if I have to use that particular. So I don't know. Don't know is a slang here. That means I don't know. What he's trying to say that I don't know whether I ought to tell you about this or not? Because if I need that particular, if I want to use it later, then so governor, that something to do with that little rubber ring for pies, perhaps. Now Evans was grinning; he was enjoying that, and governor said, "Oh, that must be quite tricky." Sticking a couple of pins of blood. He said, "Nay, not." That blood was not the problem. It was clotting actually. Clotting was the problem. That blood we got easy enough, pig's blood from the slaughter's house in Kidlington. But to stop clotting, you have to got to mix your actual blood with that. And then 3.8% trisodium citrate. So that's how we could avoid the clotting. And here we have a question, and definitely we must ask, this is an important one. The question is, how according to Evans was the clotting according to Evans was the clotting avoided? So these things, that pig's blood was to be mixed with actual blood, and then 3.8% trisodium citrate. So this was the reason. Now he said, "Didn't know that. Did you, sir?" Now governor, "Well, we learn something new every day, they tell me." So it was like he learned it from Evans that day. Now Evans made no show of resistance. He was not trying to run away at that point. They simply got down the stairs. And while getting down, the governor asked Evans, "Now tell me, Evans, how did you manage all that business? You had no letters, you had no visitors. I've seen to that." Means governor just paid particular attention to all that. So how? So he said, "I have lots of friends, though." See, through friends. "I have got lots of friends, though." Now the governor, what's that supposed to mean? Said, "A German teacher for a start." Now governor was all shocked. The German teacher who was coming to prison since last September was his friend. He was all shocked. He said, "But he was from the technical college." Now Evans was almost fully enjoying that. He was grinning and he said, was he ever check upon him, sir? Did you ever check that was he from the technical college or from Evans college?" Now governor, "Oh my goodness, that here far more is going on here than we could ever believe or think." He said, "Always will be, sir. There will always be something like that going on." Okay, now they came to the reception, and governor asked, "Everything ready?" So she said, "Yes, the van is out in the front, sir." Now Evans winked at the girl, she winked back at him, and it almost made his day. So actually what all things were set there. Now what were the things? The silent prison officer. The silent prison officer handcuffed the recaptured Evans, and then they got into the prison van. Now, at that moment, governor simply said, "See you soon, Evans," as if after a cocktail party, he is simply waving a friend off. And Evans as well. "What cheerio, sir." Now, while going, he said, "Now, sir, do you know any more of these modern languages?" He said, "Why?" "I know your German is pretty good, but because he knew German. So he was asking about if he knew any other language." So he said, "Why?" I was thinking of like you should get some Italian classes coming up next September. He said, perhaps he won't be with us next September, Ivan. So Ivan's like sort of thinking in that way. He just made a posture that as if he was thinking. He said, yes, perhaps not. Now, when they turned from that Headington roundabout and moved on to the Oxford Way, the hitherto silent prison officer, if you remember, this silent prison officer was there when McCleary got into the prison. He went alongside Stephens and then handed him over to Jackson Keeping. It means somebody from inside the prison was also in league with Evans, and that's how he could manage all that. So that silent prison officer now unlocked the handcuffs, and then he said, get a move on. To whom? To the driver. Get a move on. It won't take them long to find out. So he was asking him to accelerate, just to move the van speedily, because soon they would get to know about their plan and all those things. So he said, get a move on. And who was the driver? The driver said in broad Scots accent. Now, if you remember this broad Scots accent, we discussed about this earlier as well. This man was the same person who came to the prison as McCleary. And now he was asking, where do you suppose we move or we make for? He said, what about Newbury? So, Evans fled again. Fourth time, he got out of the prison. He was successful enough in doing that, run away from the prison. So that's it. Evans tries an O-level, and we discussed all the possible questions in this story, in this chapter. And apart from those questions, the questions at the back here are also quite important, especially that between crime and punishment, it is always the battle of wits. And what could the prison authorities have done to safe bring back of Evans to the prison? So all those things, all the questions given at the back are important ones, and once at least you must take those questions, you must practice those questions. So thank you very much.